I have 1 week until the first PQ for set 4 here in Utah, and I still have no idea what I'm doing. I started playing in set 3 and quickly realized that, well, Django was the deck for me. I've always been a mid-rangey tempo kind of toolbox player, and well, that is what Django did. And I knew something would probably happen in set 4 with how overperformant he was, but I didn't expect FFG to go as far as they did. I figured maybe they'd hit triple dark raid and call it a day, because in my opinion, I don't think Django would have been as performant without triple dark raid. At least it would have been more fair, right? Decks like Quinlan and stuff would be able to keep up and probably do really well into Django if it wasn't for triple dark raid. But, you know, they hit both, and that left me without a deck at the beginning of this set. And I haven't been able to figure out what to play since. So I've tested Kazuda, I've tested Cad Green, I've tested a little bit of Quinlan, not a ton yet. And I've also been testing the new Luke because I think it does have a lot of potential. It just hasn't really been doing super well. So we'll figure out what I can do with that at some point, just not for the PQ. I don't think it's strong enough to do that. So today I'm going out to Oasis, which is in downtown Salt Lake, playing into the store showdown there. I'm going to be playing Cad Tarkintown to see how that performs. I think it could have some good matchups. I do have it teched in a certain way to help me against decks like Sabine. So we'll see what happens. If it doesn't really work, I might just go back to Kazuda, but who knows, maybe I'll do Han or something. We'll see. We'll go do that. We'll come back. I'll recap the event, and then we'll just talk about the general meta of the game and just kind of my thoughts so far. Might be a bit of a long video, so buckle in and let's go for a ride. What a day. We're back in the little studio here, and I've got a lot to talk about. The showdown, well, it was rough. And yeah, let's get set up and we'll get into it. Okay, so as you can see, we have the deck kind of on screen here that I played at the showdown. I figured I'd recap this a little bit before we moved on to the meta discussion, and just kind of talk about what I did, what my plans are, and go from there. So I played Quinlan, or not Quinlan, Cad Tarkintown today. I was hoping that I could get this deck to work really good against Sabine and against Kira, because those were decks I figured were going to be pretty big with their current success in the planetary qualifiers and everything. And while I did really good against Sabine, Kira was still a bit rough and Quinlan was pretty rough. So we played 5 rounds of Swiss, and then we did a top cut to top 4, which I believe we had 17 players. Maybe it was 19. I can't remember. They're just, people kept showing up like last second. So it was one of the two, but it was a good event overall. And it ran pretty smoothly, albeit it was really hot. Oasis, guys, please get your AC figured out, because it really sucked being in there. It was like 80 degrees inside of that building, which I was just sweating sitting there talking to people. But that aside, everything else went pretty smooth. And while I didn't do very well, I still had fun, and I learned quite a bit. As you can see, my build's a little bit different. I'm playing some more 1-drops here, like Cantina Bragger and Daring Raid. My philosophy behind this was actually for Sabine and for Kira, as weird as that sounds. Because for Sabine, if you can start with multiple units, or even a unit plus a Daring Raid / McClunky, you can really control that early game without even using Tarkintown. Right? So you can take care of the turn 1 and then respond to the turn 2, maybe Tarkintown at that point, and really just keep Sabine off the board for the first 2 or 3 turns of the game. that worked really well. Like I said, when I got paired against Sabine in round 2, that was one of my easiest matchups of the entire day. So my philosophy worked really well for that. And I figured, you know what, while this works for Sabine, I think it'll work for Kira as well, because if you can go wide against Kira, she has a hard time keeping up with your stuff, right? Power of the Dark Side isn't as good. I mean, if they take down or whatever, right, you still have other units there to do damage. So I was like, yeah, this should be pretty good against Kira. I even sideboarded some extra stuff for that as well. But unfortunately, in round 3, it just turned out to not be enough. My overall matchups, round 1, Quinlan, I took a loss there. Round 2, Sabine, Data Vault, I took a win there. Round 3, Kira Data Vault, took the loss. Round 4 was Han 2 Data Vault, took a loss there as well, which I figured that matchup would be way better for me because they're already damaging their units, right? That sounds pretty good. Well, it was for the first few turns of the game, and then they drop things like Rebellious Hammerhead and Tantive 4 and Home 1 before I can do anything to deal with them. And even if they are damaged, I don't really have any way to deal with big space units, as you can see. And that kind of, yeah, not very good. So, unfortunately, that matchup didn't work. And then in round 5, the end of Swiss, I got paired against Vader 1 Green and was able to win that one pretty handily. So I ended at 12th place with 2 wins, 3 losses. Again, not great. Kind of rough, honestly. Quinlan just kept stripping my hand and just out aggroing me, basically. Yeah, kind of rough. And with that, I'm probably not playing Cad Bane at the Planetary Qualifier. While I think this is a great deck, and it is certainly fun to play, I do enjoy playing this deck a lot, it just feels too 50-50 to me. Not just its overall matchups, because its matchups are kind of 50-50 in a lot of ways, but also with its self, because the deck is kind of clunky. You get some pretty bad draws in this deck. I would draw into things that didn't help me a lot, and my opening hands would be rough. It kind of loses to itself. It's the best way I could describe it. So Cad, probably just not it. I also think Tarkintown's in a weird spot right now. While yes, it's still great for that early tempo, having less HP kind of sucks, especially when there's Colossus and Data Vault running around. Like, you're just starting at an 8 to 10 health disadvantage, which is pretty hard to deal with. So I don't think Cad Tarkintown is it. Maybe Cad Colossus or Cad Data Vault could do better. I'm not sure. I might try Data Vault at some point, but it's too close to the PQ for me to do that. I'm not gonna have enough time to test thoroughly. It's like I have one more showdown that I'm gonna be able to attend leading up to next Saturday, and that's just not enough to solidify something like this, at least in my opinion. Yeah, I could test online a bunch. It really helps to get that in-world testing with sideboard and things like that, and I just don't have enough time. So Cad Bane, Tarkintown, not getting played. So I'll probably go back to Kazuda. I am going to test Quinlan though. While again, I just mentioned that Tarkintown does feel kind of rough. Quinlan does have a good matchup into Kira, right? Hand control's really good against that deck. And on top of that, while Quinlan by default tends to have a weird matchup into Sabine, the way I have mine built has a pretty decent matchup, at least as long as they don't start with a space unit. Because we have X-34 Lion Speeder and we have Grogu, and both of those are really, really good against Sabine. And yes, Grogu does work against space units, so that's fine. Yeah, I don't know. I think I can get that deck to work pretty good against Sabine. And obviously, again, it works pretty good against Kira. But I feel like the matchup against Han is pretty rough, because if they open with a Falcon, we can't ping it. Which means we can't Tarkintown it. And we're just not going to have an answer for that for another turn, maybe even 2 turns, depending on how the draws and stuff go. So Han, I know for a fact, is going to be tough for that deck, and Han's fairly popular. Might get even more popular, so I don't know. But I'm going to test Quinlan at this next showdown. If that doesn't work, then I'm probably just playing Kazuda at the Planetary Qualifier, because that's the deck that's been consistent for me. It hasn't been overperforming or anything, but it has performed better than Cad Bane has, as well as pretty much everything else I've tested so far. Again, I haven't tested Quinlan super in depth, but I also stopped testing Quinlan early because I just get bored playing hand control. So yeah, I just haven't really gone back to it yet. But again, it's getting another chance at this showdown to see how I like it. Yeah, if it doesn't work out, then I'm going back to Kazuda yellow, maybe with a switch over to Han double yellow. But I feel like Kazuda's probably got a better setup against Kira, because while we probably lose our matchup a little bit more to Anakin compared to Han, we gain a matchup into Kira. So it's kind of a trade-off. And I'm sure both are going to be popular decks. So again, kind of a 50-50 there. Doesn't really matter what I decide, but that's kind of the trade-off, I think. So that's kind of my plan there and how that showdown went. Now let's get into the overall meta and just kind of break that down and give my thoughts. Now I'm not going to like break down every single event. I will kind of do the Lily event a little bit, but I just wanted to go through kind of what's been winning and share my thoughts there. So starting at Lily, which this has been talked about pretty extensively from other creators. Thork has a really good video on it, so definitely check that out. We see a win by Sabine Dateval, and this is probably one of the most exciting decks that has popped up during this season, because Sabine is just kind of a boring deck in general. Like, it's been around for a long time. We know what it does. We've seen it before, and this one's just, it's different. Like, it's still very Sabine, right? But we see a lot of interesting choices, like the Adelphi Patrol Wings. They even play the Senatorial Corvettes. We also see a little cameo from Frisk, which is just a weird choice to me, but it can get rid of shields and stuff, so maybe that's why they played it. So yeah, just a very interesting list overall, and it feels like a really good evolution of kind of what we know from Sabine, but to kind of help counteract the meta, right? I'm guarantee that this had to be a pick for the other Data Vault and the Colossus decks, because again, 25 HP, just you start at such a disadvantage, and sometimes it's hard to make up that ground. So I definitely understand why they did this, and it's cool to see a bit of a evolution there. So I definitely expect to see more decks like this pop up. I think people are going to be experimenting a lot over the next week, right? And probably have been experimenting a lot since Lily. So we might see some interesting stuff, right? I think there could be like a Quinlan Data Vault that pops up. If I remember right, there was a Cad Data Vault that got a top at one of the PQs. So there's definitely some stuff coming up. Data Vault is on the up and up, and this event, this Sabine deck, really kind of kickstarted that. Then the rest of the top 8, we see Anakin Blue, Quinlan Tarkintown, Sabine ECL, another Anakin Blue, a Ray Data Vault, then we have another Sabine ECL, and then another Kira Data Vault. So a lot of green actually in this event, in this top 8, which is interesting to see. People were complaining all over last set and even early this set that, oh, Cunning's too strong. Well, there you go. We had one Cunning deck in this entire top 8, and if we look at the top 25, it really didn't change that much. It's mostly green and red that you're seeing with some blue and some Cunning, but a lot of green and red. So there you go. Moving on from there, we're not going to break down top 8 of everything, but we'll kind of get through this. We've got lots of Kira, lots of Data Vault, and some like pop-ups from other things. Pretty diverse. Data Vault slash Kira are kind of just on top at the moment. It's certainly performing very, very well, and for good reason. Kira's really strong right now, and that extra HP goes a long way. Data Vault is definitely on the up and up, and just has been, and I think that's going to continue. I think this is going to be a trend that continues forward, and I fully expect to see a lot of these types of decks at the Spanish Fork Planetary Qualifier, because I already saw quite a few of them today at a store showdown, so I fully expect that to just continue on into the PQ. And so my estimation is we're going to see some Ray, we're going to see some Kira for sure. We're going to see some Han, both Han 2 and Han 1, both playing Data Vault probably, maybe some 30 HPs, but definitely both of the Hans are going to be in there. Let's see, obviously Sabine, like that's always going to be popular, and I think Quinlan's going to be pretty popular. So those are kind of like my estimations of what I expect to see the most of the PQ. I could be completely wrong about this, and maybe everybody's just going to be playing Han or something, but with all of these kind of control decks and these Data Vault decks kind of on the rise, I do think decks like Han 2 and Quinlan have a pretty good chance of winning, because if Kira slash Ray slash Anakin all are performing and are in high numbers at the PQ, then Quinlan has a pretty good matchup into pretty much all of those. Maybe Anakin would probably be the hardest one. Just generally speaking, hand control is really good against other control deck. Quinlan can be really aggressive. However, again, the downside is going to be Tarkintown. So the 3 big ones for me are going to be Quinlan, Kira, and Anakin. Those have kind of been on the up and up. I've seen a bit of a trend with more people playing those. And the thing is with all of those is like Quinlan does pretty good into Kira. Kira does pretty good into Anakin. And Anakin is okay into like Quinlan. Like it's kind of 50-50. But it is a bit of a triangle. And then obviously you have Sabine. So like those are kind of my 4 top picks right now. and just the things that I know that I'm going to have to watch out for. Obviously, there's plenty of other decks that are getting played. I just don't know to what degree they will be played, or obviously what I'm going to end up getting paired against. But I know I need to have consistent answers to Kira, Quinlan, and Anakin, and of course Sabine. But you should always just be testing for Sabine. If I can't reliably have answers to those, I'm going to be in trouble with the way that these showdowns have been going so far. That's kind of my thoughts and estimations there. The meta is in a super good place. I think just overall, this current meta is probably the most diverse and open-ended meta I think I've ever been in a card game, which is impressive because in over 15 years, not a single game has come even close to this. Played in GPs for Magic. I've played competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! And competitive Force of Will and all kinds of things. And they've never been this diverse, right? I've never seen any other game this open-ended, or at least personally been in a meta that was this open-ended. And so I think this is among probably the best, if not the best meta I've ever played in, just in that regard. It has also been incredibly difficult. It is a good meta. I think the thing that's been so difficult for me personally is I was going to play Django. I didn't really have a very good backup plan. Hopefully something works out and I'll do okay in the PQ, but I'll be honest, I don't really expect to do that well just because I feel so unprepared. So we'll see what happens. We have a week and hopefully I'll have something more figured out by then. So anyways, there's my thoughts and analysis recap kind of thing for you. Let me know what you think and see you next time.